Greetings, brothers and sisters. I know it's been a long time. I've had some severe writer's block. I probably will have writer's block in the conceivable future as well. I would like to give a shout out to Dan and his family, who I've crossed paths with in the past and will hopefully continue to do so in the future. I really enjoyed meeting all. Today, I would like to talk about elder politics. Now, I personally was never an elder. However, I had 3 family members that were elders, and I know I've overheard things that oftentimes I should not have. But what amazed me over the years, and as the years went on, was rather than elders being spiritually mature men, the more I knew about things and overheard, the more it seemed to me that elders were sort of like children on a playground behaving badly. And, it was, at the time, it was really difficult, but of course in retrospect it makes perfect sense. Every witness considers whatever their problems are as local, that it's not an organizational problem, it's just in my congregation that there are problems. I don't know why these people are behaving this way. However, in retrospect, the problem is universal. It's throughout the organization, not only horizontally but vertically, from head to foot. The problem is systemic, and there are politics all the way up the ladder, and so it's really no surprise in retrospect. But I always wondered, why do elders seem to be feuding with one another? It's sort of like the country song, and I'm not going to attempt to sing because I cannot sing to save my life. But the country song, behind closed doors, and I'll replace she with they as a pronoun, but when they get behind closed doors, they let their hair hang down. No one knows what goes behind closed doors. And most publishers or the rank and file will likely never know what transpires behind those closed doors elders meetings. Those of you out there who are former elders, or perhaps you are current elders right now, you know good and well what goes behind closed doors. Now, I realize there are some sincere elders out there who are conscientious, who try to do the best they can given their circumstances, and there are many of those throughout the organization. However, oftentimes, politics forms within elder bodies, and oftentimes it's really minor differences. Well, and it's no big surprise because this is a high-demand religious group. The performance matters. Adherence to minutiae, little teeny rules here or there, matters. If you do not adhere to all the different rules, well, you get removed, or perhaps even more severely. Now, every elder will, lip service is given to say, oh, well, you're not above your brothers and sisters. We're not like, quote-unquote, Christendom. However, there is a more pronounced clergy class within Jehovah's Witnesses than there are in Protestant churches. And if Protestant churches, there are elders and deacons and other people, but the power invested in these positions or in these roles are not to the same degree as in Jehovah's Witnesses, where the elders have the ability to form judicial committees and the power to investigate people's private affairs and form secret investigative committees, where people can be disfellowshipped and shunned or reproved and publicly shamed all these things, none of that, well, there are some other extreme groups within the umbrella of Protestantism, but more or less mainline churches, people are more equal, even though there are, as a paid pastor in many cases. But even he, doesn't have the power that Jehovah's Witness elders do to change people's lives radically. So, and of course, it's inevitable that a certain amount of pride is taken in that position. Of course, lip service is given that, oh, well, I'm not, position-minded. This is not a position, and so forth. But in reality, a great amount of shame is experienced when a person is demoted from that position, or even if they themselves draw back, step down themselves, there's a certain amount of stigma to that. And it would be really dishonest for people to say that's not the case. Elders do a lot to maintain that position. And, it's really, to come down from that high horse, as it were, is definitely not optimal. When you're in that club, of course, your position in the congregation affects to a certain degree your social standing, your popularity, being used on parts, especially at assemblies, is, you're looked up to. But I've noticed throughout the years, feuds occur. Oftentimes, relatives of mine were embroiled in some political battle with another elder, another faction, and I could never figure out why. And I'm not saying that, oftentimes, probably my relatives were the troublemakers as much as the other folks. So, and sometimes my relatives were winners, and oftentimes they came out on the losing end, in some cases being forced to step down after weeks and weeks of infighting and with the Kobe or presiding overseer trying to, it's just that whole, it's very enlightening. But, looking back at it, I don't harbor any sort of bitterness that any relatives may have come to on the losing end of it, any more than I look back at any feuds that occur in elementary school on the playground. It's just children, on a playground behaving badly, not spiritually mature men. I noticed that elders could be sometimes, the least mature. And that's no surprise because they don't have a lot of time to devote to, say, reading the Bible as much as other people. They don't have more time to developing inner qualities and spirituality as other people. But again, looking back at matters, it's kind of silly now. In fact, well, I don't mean to, I'm not trying to be preachy, but I like to read this passage because it exemplifies sort of how it resonates with me a great deal. It's found in Philippians chapter 3, and I'll just start with in the middle of verse 4. If any other man thinks he has grounds for confidence in the flesh, I the more so. Circumcised the 8th day, out of the family stock of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew born from Hebrews, as respects law of Pharisee, as respects zeal persecuting the congregation, as respects righteousness, that is, by means of law, one who proved himself blameless. The Apostle Paul here was speaking of his former way of life, and as far as finding pride in it. And what he was, unlike what has been applied in the past in this organization, Paul was not speaking of some sort of material, prestigious law career and some sort of material way of life, some sort of secular way of life. In fact, he was speaking of his religion. In fact, notice what Paul highlights here. He was a Pharisee. He was zealous. So he took pride in his sect, in his zeal, in his righteousness. All these things are what Paul, used to take pride in at this point in time. Now, notice what, the change Paul had. He said, "Yet what things were considered gains to me, these I considered loss on account of the Christ. Why, for that matter, I do indeed consider all things to be loss on account of the excelling value of the knowledge of Christ Jesus my Lord. On account of him, I have taken the loss of all things, and I consider them a lot of refuse, that I may gain Christ." So Paul used pretty strong language there. A lot of refuse, and forgive my language, but in essence, he meant it was a bunch of crap. His religion, his zeal, his righteousness, all those things he took pride in, it was a lot of refuse. It was meaningless, a loss. His spirituality, his relationship with the divine meant more than these things. So as we step away from this organization, many of us have to take a loss of all things. Relationships that we've had, or whatever pride that we had in position or in works, these things we have to take a loss at. They're a loss. They're meaningless. All those rules that we adhere to on all those things. It's sort of like, that, I like playing badminton. And, I just like hitting the birdie back and forth. That's a lot of fun, to do. But, one thing I've observed is that when people start keeping score and adhering to the rules of the game, then arguments break out. Oh, this is on the line, this is over the line, oh, you can't count that. And it ceases to be fun. In a similar way, in this high-demand environment, spirituality is less a factor, true spirituality, than adherence to rules, a long list of rules, and performance goals. So when I look back at that, one has to laugh, and one has to regard all that drama, all that psychodrama, as just merely children on a playground behaving badly. So it's really no surprise that these things occur behind closed doors. And it's not just local, but it's all throughout the earth, every kingdom hall, every elder body, and it goes all the way to the top. Well, that's all I have for today. I'm sorry it turned out to be a disorganized ramble, but live long and prosper, everyone. Have a good day.